My wife cheated with a better man, and my daughters took her side. Until one moment shattered everything. I, a 38-year-old male, was married to Vanessa, a 36-year-old female, for 15 years. We have a daughter, Zoe, who is 19. This is going to be a long one, so grab a beer. Vanessa and I met in our junior year of college. I was grinding through an engineering program, living off ramen and energy drinks. She was an education major who somehow found me interesting, despite the fact I was basically a walking zombie most days. We clicked right away. She was outgoing, organized, and actually laughed at my terrible jokes. I was the quiet, planning ahead type. Somehow, it worked. After graduation, we got married at a small venue with maybe 50 people there. Her parents helped a bit, but we paid for most of it ourselves since my folks weren't exactly rolling in cash. 2 years later, Zoe came along. Perfect timing, actually. Vanessa had just finished her teaching credential, and I'd landed an entry-level engineering gig at a firm downtown. The pay was decent for a starting position, about $48,000, but the hours were absolutely brutal. 60 to 70-hour weeks were standard. Sometimes, I'd be at the office until 2 in the morning during crunch periods. Vanessa and I talked it over and decided she'd stay home with Zoe, rather than pay for daycare. It made financial sense, since childcare would have eaten most of her teaching salary anyway, and we both wanted a parent at home. Those first few years were tough, but good, you know? We had this tiny starter house in a decent school district. Nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, needed work, but it was ours. I'd come home dead tired, and Vanessa would have dinner waiting. She'd give me 30 minutes to decompress, then hand me baby Zoe for daddy time while she cleaned up. Weekends, I'd take care of Zoe so Vanessa could have a break, and we'd do house projects together during nap time. I busted my ass at that company, took every assignment nobody wanted, worked holidays when needed. The promotions started coming. Junior engineer to project engineer to team lead to project manager. By year 8 of our marriage, I'd more than doubled my salary to around $110,000. We were able to move to a better house in a nicer neighborhood. Nothing extravagant, but definitely an upgrade. For bedrooms with a yard for Zoe to play in, good schools nearby. I remember the day we closed on that house. Vanessa was crying happy tears, saying how proud she was of all my hard work. We talked about our future plans, how we'd pay it off early, maybe get a vacation cabin someday, how we'd help Zoe through college so she wouldn't be drowning in student loans like we were. I felt like the man that day, providing for my family in a way my own dad never could. Zoe was a total daddy's girl back then. Even with my insane hours, I made sure to carve out time for her. She'd wait by the window for my car to pull in, even if I got home at 9 in the evening. Weekends were our time. I taught her fishing at this little pond near our house, how to change a tire when she was like 10. Kid had tiny hands, perfect for getting to those lug nuts. Helped with math homework. We did science fair projects together 3 years running, built these cool volcano models that actually worked. One got first place every time. Our marriage wasn't perfect, don't get me wrong. We had fights. Sometimes I missed important stuff because of work. Vanessa would get pissed that I was emotionally distant or always working, but we always worked it out. At least I thought we did. Looking back, I can see I was more checked out than I realized. When you're working 12 to 14-hour days, you don't have a ton of emotional energy left. But I figured Vanessa understood that I was killing myself at work for us, not because I wanted to miss a dance recital or whatever. I thought we had this unspoken agreement. I'd provide the financial stability, the house, the college fund, the security. She'd handle the home front, the emotional stuff, making our house a place I actually wanted to come back to after those long days. It worked for almost 15 years. I thought we were solid. Man, I was so wrong. The first sign something was off came about 8 months ago. Looking back, there were probably hints before that, but I was too busy at work to notice. By this point, I was a senior project manager making about $135,000, but still putting in 60-plus-hour weeks. Trying to land this promotion to director that would bump me to around $175,000. The extra money would fully fund Zoe's college so she wouldn't need loans, plus give us breathing room to actually start saving seriously for retirement. I started noticing Vanessa was getting all dressed up for the most basic errands, full makeup, hair done, new outfits just to go to Target or whatever. At first, I thought, good for her, taking care of herself, but then it got weird. She'd leave at 10 in the morning to go grocery shopping and come back at 3 in the afternoon with like one bag of groceries, Or she'd have coffee with a friend that somehow took 5 hours. Her schedule changed completely, too. Suddenly, her yoga classes that used to be an hour were now 3 hours long. Book club went from meeting once a month to every week, and somehow these meetings would stretch from 7 in the evening until midnight. Girls' night started happening twice a week instead of once a month. Again, I didn't think much of it because I was pulling major overtime to finish this massive project for a client that would basically guarantee my promotion. The money stuff started getting really sketchy, though. Our credit card statements were showing all these charges at restaurants in parts of town she claimed she never went to. When I asked about a $120 charge at some steakhouse downtown, she'd say it must have been a mistake or that she went there for Jessica's birthday. But then I'd see Instagram posts from Jessica that day showing her somewhere completely different. Vanessa's shopping was getting out of control, too. She dropped $500 at Nordstrom, but I'd never see any new clothes. Weekend girls' trips that used to be once a year were now happening every couple of months, each one costing a grand or more. When I'd bring up the spending, she'd get super defensive saying I was trying to control her or that I didn't want her to have any fun while I was always working. Classic Darvo. Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. I'd back down because technically we could afford it. I was making good money, but the pattern was sketchy as hell. Zoe's behavior shifted dramatically, too. This kid who used to wait up for me couldn't be bothered to look up from her phone when I walked in the door. She became super secretive with her mom, sharing these looks like they had some inside joke I wasn't part of. She started making these little comments like, "Must be nice to make so much money, or dad's never home anyway, so who cares what he thinks?" The entitlement got really bad. Zoe started expecting crazy expensive stuff. Designer clothes, the latest iPhone the day it dropped, concert tickets costing hundreds. When I suggested she get a weekend job like I did in college, Vanessa would immediately shut it down. She needs to focus on her education. We don't want her struggling like we did. Somehow, I became the bad guy for suggesting a 19-year-old learn some work ethic. Meanwhile, my credit card statement showed Zoe spending $100 at Sephora or $300 at these fancy restaurants I'd never even heard of. Their stories started contradicting each other, too. Vanessa would say they spent the day shopping, but Zoe would slip up and mention some restaurant by the lake. They started having these hushed conversations that would immediately stop when I walked into the room. I noticed all this stuff, but I convinced myself I was being paranoid or that it was just normal mother-daughter stuff. After 15 years of marriage, you're supposed to trust your wife, right? Plus, I was so focused on landing this promotion that I didn't have the mental bandwidth to really process what was happening. Big mistake, as it turns out. It all came crashing down about 3 months ago. I'd been fighting this killer migraine all morning. My team had just wrapped up that massive project I mentioned, so my boss told me to take the rest of the day off and get some rest. First time I'd left work early in probably 2 years. I didn't text Vanessa to tell her I was coming home, partly because my head was pounding so bad I could barely see straight, but also I figured she'd be out spending my money somewhere anyway. I pulled into our driveway around 1 in the afternoon. I was heading upstairs to take some meds and lie down when I heard voices coming from the kitchen. I was about to call out when I heard my name. "Dad has no freaking idea," Zoe was saying, laughing. "He's basically just an ATM with legs at this point." I froze in the hallway. What the actual hell? Honestly, I stopped feeling bad months ago, Vanessa replied, sounding completely cold. Derek's getting impatient though. "Once you graduate, we're done here." My stomach dropped. Derek? Done here? What the hell was happening? God, Derek is so much better than Dad, Zoe continued. Like actually fun instead of just work obsessed. What a chump. Dad is almost a year of this, and the idiot still hasn't noticed a thing, Vanessa said with this laugh that made my blood run cold. Too busy making money for us to spend. Derek said we could stay at his lake house next month, Zoe added. Dad won't even notice we're gone. Not if he keeps working himself to death for us, Vanessa replied. Best sucker ever. I stood there, completely frozen, like someone had just poured ice water down my spine. 15 years of marriage, 19 years of fatherhood, all my 60 to 70-hour work weeks, all the missed vacations, all the stress and sacrifice, reduced to being their personal ATM. The two people I'd given everything for were literally laughing at me behind my back. It felt like someone had punched a hole straight through my chest. That migraine suddenly didn't hurt at all compared to what I was feeling. I'd spent almost 2 decades killing myself at work to provide for these people, and in return, they were mocking me and plotting to leave once they'd squeezed everything they could out of me. And who the hell was Derek? Some guy my wife had apparently been seeing for almost a year while I was working overtime to fund her shopping addiction and my daughter's college tuition. The same college where she was apparently learning how to be a gold-digging backstabber, just like her mom. All those weekends I'd gone into the office to catch up while they were out shopping. All those client dinners I'd suffered through to land contracts that would secure our financial future, all for this. They kept talking, unloading all their plans. How they'd wait until I paid the last of Zoe's tuition before Vanessa would file for divorce. How they'd already talked to some divorce attorney who told Vanessa she could get half my retirement account and probably the house too. How Derek had a boat and a lake house and took them on these little trips while telling me they were going to visit Vanessa's sister or whatever. I didn't even recognize these people anymore. My wife, who I'd shared a bed with for 15 years. My daughter, who I'd taught to ride a bike and helped with homework and stayed up with when she was sick. They were strangers wearing familiar faces, laughing about how stupid I was for working myself half to death to give them a comfortable life. I silently backed away and slipped out the front door before they could notice me. They were so wrapped up in their little conspiracy. They didn't even hear the door close. I got in my car and just sat there for a minute. I didn't need any more evidence after what I'd heard. I drove straight to a divorce attorney my buddy had used a couple of years back, called from the parking lot and basically begged for an emergency appointment. The lawyer seemed surprised by how certain I was about everything. Most guys come in waffling, I guess, not me. When you hear your own kid call you an ATM with legs while your wife laughs, there's not much left to discuss. By 4.30 that same day, I'd officially filed for divorce, signed the paperwork, paid the retainer, $5,000 out of my personal account, and got a clear action plan for what to do next. My lawyer didn't try to drag things out to bill more hours, just gave me straight talk about what I needed to do to protect myself. First priority was getting my finances locked down. I spent the next week methodically separating everything, opened new accounts at a completely different bank where Vanessa and I had no history, transferred most of our savings into my new personal account, left about $2,000 in the joint account so they wouldn't immediately notice something was wrong, called all 4 credit card companies and reported the cards as compromised, had new cards sent to my office instead of our home, put strict limits on the remaining joint card, $500 max, which would be enough for groceries and basics, but not Vanessa's usual shopping sprees, changed the direct deposit for my paychecks to the new account, called my 401k provider and made sure they had extra security questions on the account, documented all our assets, took photos of everything valuable in the house, made copies of all financial statements, downloaded all bank records showing the regular pattern of Vanessa's excessive spending over the past year. Vanessa had been systematically siphoning money from our joint account into a separate account I didn't even know existed, nearly $30,000 gone. When I showed this to my lawyer, he just said it would work in my favor in the divorce proceedings. She's been planning her exit strategy on your dime, he said. Judges don't look kindly on that. The hardest part was coming home each night and acting like everything was normal. I'd sit at dinner, listening to Vanessa talk about her day. Yoga was so intense today. Yeah, right. 3-hour yoga, sure. I'd watch Zoe texting under the table, both of them completely clueless that I knew what they were doing. I'd nod at the right moments, ask about their plans for the weekend, even approved an expensive shopping trip for Zoe that weekend, knowing it would be the last one I'd ever fund. They didn't notice anything different about me, just the same old predictable dad, husband, too focused on work to see what was happening right under his nose. At work, I started quietly getting my affairs in order too, spoke to my boss about taking some personal days in the coming weeks, started documenting all my projects and creating transition plans in case the divorce got messy and affected my job performance. My boss could tell something was up, but didn't push, just told me to take whatever time I needed. I also took the time to carefully read through our mortgage documents, car loans, everything. Turned out the house was in better shape than I thought. I'd bought it before our marriage and had made every payment from my income, so my lawyer was confident I could keep it. Both our cars were paid off, but mine was in my name, while hers was joint. Another thing to sort out. After a full week of preparation, I was ready. I waited until after dinner on a Friday night, when I knew both Vanessa and Zoe would be home. Zoe had come back from college for the weekend, supposedly to do laundry, but probably to hit me up for more money. I called them both into the living room, turned off the TV, and sat down across from them, like we were about to discuss vacation plans or something. 15 years of marriage was about to end. I was finally taking back control of my life from people who had been playing me for a fool. So I said, casually, like I was about to comment on the weather. Filed for divorce last week. Thought you should know. The look on Vanessa's face was absolutely priceless. Pure shock, followed by confusion, then panic. Zoe froze mid-text, her thumbs hovering over her phone screen. The silence in the room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. You what? Vanessa finally managed to say. I leaned back in my chair, completely relaxed. Divorce. You know that thing that happens when your wife is screwing some dude for a year while your daughter cheers her on? Vanessa went pale as a ghost. Zoe looked like she might throw up. I don't know what you're. Vanessa started. I cut her off with a laugh that probably sounded a bit unhinged. Save it. Seriously. I heard you two in the kitchen last week. How I'm just an ATM with legs. How Derek is way better than boring old dad. How you're planning to bail after graduation. By the way, solid life plan. Truly inspirational. Dad, I. Zoe started, but I cut her off too. Not finished, I said. I wasn't yelling, wasn't even particularly angry anymore. Just done. The problem with conspiracies is they're hard to keep quiet in your own house. So let me lay out how this is going to work. I continued, my voice calm. The divorce is filed. Already done. Non-negotiable. I've moved most of our assets where you can't touch them. But don't worry, I left $2,000 in the joint account. That should cover what? Half a month of your regular shopping? What? But you can't just. Vanessa stammered. Actually, I can. And I did. I smiled. Before you start with the excuses about how I work too much, or I'm emotionally unavailable, or whatever script you've prepared, save your breath. When you decided to cheat instead of communicate, you lost the right to that conversation. The tension in the room was heavy. Zoe, probably realizing her college fund was in serious jeopardy, decided to try a different approach. You're overreacting. Mom deserves to be happy. And anyway, Derek is. Let me stop you right there, I said. I don't care about Derek. This isn't about him. This is about respect and honesty. Two things neither of you seem to understand. Vanessa was crying now. It would have broken my heart a week ago. Now, I just felt nothing. What do you want me to say? She sobbed. That I screwed up? Fine, I screwed up. But you haven't been emotionally present for years. You're right about one thing, I said. I have been too focused on providing and not enough on what was happening in my own home. My bad. Lesson learned. I then laid out the reality of their new situation with cold precision. My lawyer had walked me through the likely division of assets based on our state's laws. The house would likely stay mine, since I'd purchased it before marriage and made all payments from my income. The vacation property we bought 5 years ago would probably be split. But given Vanessa's documented financial misconduct, I had a good chance of keeping that too. We each would keep our own vehicles. The retirement accounts would be the main battleground. But even there, my lawyer was confident we could limit the damage. You can't just cut us off financially, Zoe blurted. What about my senior trip? What about tuition for next semester? I looked at my daughter with something between pity and disgust. This kid I'd read bedtime stories to for years, who I'd taught to ride a bike, who used to wear my old college sweatshirts to bed because they smelled like me, now a stranger. Actions have consequences. I said simply, you called me a wallet. Congratulations, you just found out wallets have locks. You want money for extras? Get a job like I did at your age. Vanessa tried a different tack, switching from tears to bargaining. This isn't fair to Zoe. She's just a kid. She shouldn't suffer because of our marriage problems. I actually laughed at that one. She's not a kid. She's 19, old enough to laugh about her dad being a financial doormat, old enough to keep your affair secret, to plan her escape on my dime, and definitely old enough to learn that actions have consequences. The rest of the night was a blur of tears, accusations, and failed attempts at manipulating me. Zoe stormed off to her room, slamming the door. Vanessa tried every angle. Anger, more tears, guilt trips. I slept well that night for the first time in years. Despite everything, I was at peace. Better yet, I was finally calling the shots in my own life. The next few weeks were tense as hell. We established this weird, awkward coexistence in the house. I started working longer hours again, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to avoid being home. When I was there, Vanessa alternated between tearful apologies and silence, depending on which approach she thought might work that day. Zoe went full-on teenager, slamming doors and giving me death glares across the dinner table. I stuck to my guns on the financial restrictions. Zoe had a complete meltdown when her credit card wouldn't cover the $400 prom dress she wanted. She came storming into my home office while I was on a work call. "This is bullshit," she yelled. "How am I supposed to go to formal now?" "You could get a weekend job at the mall," I suggested. "They're always hiring at the food court." She started mumbling things I couldn't hear. I just shrugged and went back to my spreadsheet. I realized I didn't even feel upset. It's weird how quickly someone can become a stranger to you. The divorce proceedings moved forward like clockwork. Vanessa hired her own attorney, this lady who apparently specialized in getting women what they deserve. Her first move was to file a counterpetition, claiming she deserved more due to her years of unpaid domestic labor and my emotional abandonment. She tried to paint herself as this long-suffering housewife who'd been forced to raise our child alone while I was off making money. I didn't even blink. My lawyer was a complete shark. He'd already documented everything. The affair, long story short, we found months of messages between her and Derek using our shared iCloud, and found emails that confirmed everything. The stolen money, the secret account. 2 days after Vanessa's counterpetition, the judge rejected most of her claims based on the evidence of her infidelity and financial misconduct. I kept the house, as expected, kept my car, my 401k, minus a smaller than expected settlement to Vanessa, and our vacation property. The judge ruled I'd paid for it with my separate income, not marital funds. Vanessa got her car and a small portion of our savings. Good for me. About 3 weeks in, Vanessa and Zoe were still in the house because securing the house and the preliminary hearing takes months. Reality started hitting them both hard. Derek was suddenly too busy to see Vanessa now that she didn't have access to our full bank accounts. Funny how that works. She'd call him, sometimes crying, and he'd make excuses about work or family obligations. I didn't try to eavesdrop, but the house isn't that big, and Vanessa wasn't exactly quiet during these calls. One night, I heard her literally begging him to meet up, saying she needed someone. He apparently said he needed some space to figure things out, aka he needed to find a new sugar mama. Zoe's friends started pulling away, too. Turns out, when you can't fund shopping sprees, some friendships fade fast. She came home early from a weekend hangout, clearly upset. Later, I overheard her on the phone, complaining that her friends had gone to some expensive restaurant and then a concert she couldn't afford. They didn't even offer to help pay. She whined to whoever was on the other end. Like, they know my situation. They know Dad cut me off. Welcome to real friendship, kid. When the free ride ends, you find out who actually likes you for you. I didn't gloat or rub it in, just let natural consequences do their work. When Vanessa couldn't buy groceries one week because she'd blown most of her money on trying to impress Derek, I bought them myself. When Zoe needed money for a legitimate school field trip, I paid for it directly to the school. I was just no longer funding the lifestyle that had enabled their disrespect. Strangest part was how my own life started improving almost immediately. I got that director promotion at work, partly because I'd been more focused and effective since the confrontation. Yeah, the boring, hardworking father pays off. Something about setting boundaries in your personal life makes it easier to do the same professionally. My blood pressure dropped 20 points. I started sleeping better than I had in years, started reconnecting with old friends I'd lost touch with because I was always working to fund Vanessa's lifestyle. My buddy and I started playing basketball on weekends again, even joined a hiking group that met on Saturday mornings, something I'd never had time for before. Slowly, signs of change appeared in Vanessa and Zoe, too. Vanessa started job hunting, updating her old teaching resume, called her former principal to see if there were any openings. Zoe applied for a part-time job at the mall without me having to push her. I even saw her looking at cheaper state schools online one night, a far cry from the expensive private university she'd been attending on my dime. They were adjusting to the new reality, whether they liked it or not. And me? Well, it wasn't my problem, not anymore. About 2 months into the divorce process, I secured the house in the preliminary hearing. This meant Vanessa and Zoe had to move out. I gave them a week to pack their essential stuff. They found this crappy small apartment across town that Vanessa could barely afford on her new part-time receptionist job at a dentist's office. Moving day was weird. I hired a small moving crew to help them because despite everything, I didn't want to be a total jerk about it. I stood in my driveway, watching them load up the truck with furniture we'd picked out together, photos of happier times, all that stuff. I didn't feel sad, exactly. More like I was watching a movie about someone else's life falling apart. Years of my life gone to waste for what? Some guy? Well, their loss. Zoe barely spoke to me the whole day, just this cold shoulder routine like I was the villain in her story. Vanessa tried the weepy approach again, kept finding reasons to talk to me alone. Are you sure this is what you want? We could still fix this. And my personal favorite, what am I supposed to do now? Like it was somehow my job to figure out her life after she'd spent a year cheating and planning to leave me. I just kept responses short and focused on practical matters. By the end of the day, they were gone. The first couple of nights were admittedly rough. The house felt too empty, too quiet. But then I started reclaiming spaces, moved my stuff back into the master bedroom that I'd vacated during our awkward coexistence, set up a proper home office in Zoe's old room, converted the formal dining room that Vanessa had insisted on but we never actually used into a home gym, started grilling on weeknights just because I felt like it, bought a new TV for the living room, bigger than the one Vanessa always complained would ruin her decor, got a dog from the local shelter, this goofy lab mix named Charlie who follows me around like I'm the greatest human ever. Work improved dramatically, too. I started leaving the office by 6 most days. The promotion came through with a nice bump in salary, but now I actually had time to enjoy the extra money. About 2 weeks after they moved, my phone rang while I was making dinner. It was Zoe. I almost declined, but curiosity got the better of me. She was all choked up, sounding like she'd been crying for hours, and drops this bomb that Derek straight up vanished when he found out there wasn't a fat divorce settlement coming his way. Blocked her number and everything. Classic. I was just standing in my kitchen sorting through bills when she hit me with this, and I couldn't help but smile. Like, am I supposed to feel bad that the dude who helped wreck my marriage turned out to be a gold digger? Talk about life finds a way to balance things out. Vanessa is apparently falling apart over this, and Zoe seemed genuinely shocked when I didn't immediately rush to comfort them. There was this awkward silence, and then Zoe mumbled something about how they didn't think, which is exactly the problem, isn't it? Not going to lie. There's a certain satisfaction in seeing karma play out in 4K. She hung up. Since that day, she stopped calling. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized, and my life has done a complete 180. I'm down 30 pounds from hitting the gym 4 times a week. Money situation is night and day too. With just myself to support, I'm banking more than ever. The house is totally different now. Renovated the kitchen Vanessa complained about for years. Converted Zoe's room into a killer home office with triple monitors for gaming. My good boy Charlie goes absolutely nuts when I walk through the door every day. Meanwhile, Vanessa and Zoe's lives have gone to complete hell. Through mutual friends, I heard Vanessa got fired from her receptionist job for constantly calling in sick. She's working at a convenience store now. Zoe had to drop out of her fancy college when the tuition bill came due. What can I say? Karma's a bitch. Then came this morning. I'm just minding my business when there's a knock at the door. Lo and behold, it's Vanessa, looking like she just crawled out of a dumpster. She hits me with that classic, "Can we talk?" lying while trying to peek inside what used to be her house. I didn't invite her in, just stood in the doorway. We're already talking. Then came the whole sob story, how Derek bounced as soon as he realized there wasn't a big payday coming. Shocking, I know. How they're living in some moldy apartment. How Zoe had to drop out and is couch surfing at a friend's place. Of course, it all led to what I knew was coming. She needed just a little help to get back on her feet. Promised she'd pay me back once she found something better, which is code for never. I just looked at this woman I spent 15 years with, who laughed behind my back and tried to clean me out and said, "No, simple as that." She started crying about how they might lose their apartment, and I just told her, "That sounds like a you problem, not a me problem." Later, Zoe emailed me some guilt trip about missing me and not knowing what to do. For a second, I almost felt bad, remembering all the dad stuff. Then I remembered hearing her disrespecting me and laughing about it. Hit delete. Look, I've moved on, made some actual friends I can trust. My buddy Mark asked if I regretted how things went down, told him, maybe with Zoe someday, if she genuinely changed. But Vanessa? That bridge isn't just burned, it's completely gone. Some might think I'm being harsh, but after 15 years of being used by people who should have loved me, I finally put myself first, and honestly, I've never been better. I don't feel bad about cutting Vanessa off. She made her bed. 2. Yes, I've thought about trying to rebuild something with Zoe eventually, but she was taught to be like this by her mother, so I don't really think it will change. It's harsh, I know, but she crossed the line. She needs to grow up and realize her mistake. 3. For the people saying I should have tried counseling first. She was screwing some dude for a year while stealing my money and planning to leave. What exactly was there to counsel? For those wondering about Derek, he is not my concern. You guys might not understand, but my issue isn't with him. There are tons of douchebags like him looking for sugar mommies. but I never thought my wife would fall for these. What can I say? Life has a sense of humor in proving you wrong sometimes.